Welcome to the Social Adventures Podcast. Most families plan vacations, and some families build into their lifestyle around adventure. And today's guests, Rob and Kristin DeCou, are doing exactly just that, one national park at a time. I'm going to just kind of let you guys share a little bit. I want to ask Kristin first, how about the Six Pack of Peaks? Because you were a Six Pack of Peak ambassador for a long time. How did the Six Pack of Peaks enter your life, and where did that get started?
Yeah, so we used to live in Los Angeles. We now live in Washington State. And I was hiking a lot with friends and needed a challenge. And anyone who knows me knows that I need some type of outdoors challenge. And I don't even know how I came across the Six Pack of Peaks, but I roped Rob into it and we started hiking. And then I still remember I was excited about the finishers party. And we went, and it was October 2019, that I met you, Jeff. And I remember also meeting the super hiking twins. And we still keep in touch the way that you bring people together. And that launched into, I'm going to do 2 Six Pack of Peak challenges, or I'm going to do another one. And I did the Arizona Six Pack of Peak challenge with Lucy, another ambassador. And so it really kickstarted something bigger for me. So I just want to thank you for having that available for a lot of us who just want to do more in the outdoors, but maybe need some structure and knowing where to start.
Well, thank you, Kristin. That's very kind. And it's cool that you got to do that with Rob and with some of the other people. I did 5 of the 6 peaks in the Las Vegas challenge with Lucy as well, and I've hiked the Arizona challenge with some of the other ambassadors and in Oregon. And this last summer we did a trip to Colorado. We did the Colorado Six Pack of Peaks with Philip Yoho and Joe Nario and a bunch of other people from Social Hikers. So it was really fun to be able to go out and experience that within a short time frame too, because we were there for basically 8 days. So a lot of fun, a lot of fun. All right. So Rob, so talk a little bit about, how the outdoors plays a role in your life. I know that you've done a lot of sort of athletic sort of adventures and had a lot of challenges yourself that you've taken on. So talk a little bit about that and introduce yourself and who you are as an athlete.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, my name is Rob DeCou. I remember when Kristin and we were first getting together, we were both training for half marathons and marathons. And then I kind of went off the deep end and got into ultra and sports. And so it's been kind of a journey for us the last, about 15 years. We were dating and getting married. I did my first 100-miler, the Leadville 100, and then moved into some of the world's toughest ultra endurance competitions, triathlons, some bike racing. So we did Race Across America in 2016. And moving into the hiking, once we started having kids, it was how can I take some of the extreme sports and spend time with my family and with Kristin. And, I did a couple of the Six Pack of Peak hikes with her. And then we were able to start pulling our kids, in front packs and backpacks. And so that just became part of our family journey. Was I would do my things, and then oftentimes we could all come together, and the hiking and these family trips ended up being that bonding time as a family.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about when did it shift from sort of hiking and the outdoors as a thing that we do to something that's a value you're modeling for your kids? Either one of you can answer that.
Yeah, well, I remember. So I was pregnant with Hudson, and we were in Acadia National Park. And I think we were just thinking, what are the adventures we want to have with our kids? And we have, just Hudson was at the time. And so we knew we had 18 years, and we decided that we wanted to do 3 huge adventures as a family, just during that year that I was pregnant with him, 2016. And so those 3 things that we decided at the time were, let's visit all the national parks with Hudson before he turns 18. So giving us this 18-year goal. And again, visiting a few parks a year. And also wanting to take an around the world trip, because travel and adventure are very important to me. I did that when I was 24 after some unfortunate circumstances. And then we talked about doing some big endurance feat, because Rob loves endurance. And so I think we actually decided even before we ever had our kids that we wanted travel and adventure to be part of our family ethos, if that makes sense.
Okay. So how many national parks? You have three big goals, really, it sounds like. So, travel around the world, visit as many or all of the national parks by the time Hudson's 18. And what was the endurance thing, or what was the?
Yeah, but
Okay.
mine, Maintenance challenge. We did do the Camino, so I don't know. That's more of a pilgrimage. It was 500 miles, but essentially pick some big endurance challenge that we can all do as a family. So the kids are still pretty young. They're 7 and 9, but maybe when they're in high school, we all do something big. Yeah.
Okay. So talk a little bit about the national park component of that. So how many national parks are there that?
Yeah. So there's 433 NPS sites in the United States and territories. So we are mainly talking, and there's 19 different designations. So there's national scenic rivers, there's national preserves, and then there's national parks. So we are on a quest or journey to visit the 63 national parks that are in the U.S. and also include American Samoa, a U.S. territory.
Okay. Wow. And how many of those national parks have you guys visited so far?
So we're currently at 56 out of the 63, 7 left, and we're planning on doing those last 7 over the next 2 years.
Wow. So what are the 7 that you have left? Is it really like hard to get to, or, did you go for the low hanging fruit first and then you're kind of working your way up to some of the Denali or whatever? And
Yes. So the Alaska parks are just expensive and hard to get to. And it's really just a money game, probably. So we did go to 3 parks in Alaska, the 3 that you can drive to. We did that this year. Yeah. Sorry, last year. Yeah, last summer. Sorry. And then we still have 5 parks in Alaska, and you either need to take a flight or a boat to get to those parks. So we are planning on visiting Glacier Bay this year and the other 4 parks on flights. But you can imagine with 4 people flying in and out of really small rural airports in Alaska, it adds up very quickly. So we're just saving our miles on Alaska Airlines and it's summer. But yes, you have to, it's the long game in visiting Alaska unless you have
yeah.
it's supplemental income or so.
Yeah. Right. Brilliant. So what are you hoping, or, you probably already have, your kids already have favorite memories from some of the parks. Well, what do you guys as parents, what do you hope that your kids remember about these trips?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of it's just the connection to the outdoors. And, when I look back, one of the ways I view decisions I make with ultra sports is when I'm 70 or 80 years old, what are the things I'm going to regret either doing or not doing? And most of it are the things that you regret not doing. And so for me, I want them to remember that quality time with family where we were out there on that hike, and it was, I think back on some of the hikes we did Mount Lassen or some of these longer climbs where in the beginning there were struggles, and then there was beauty, and then there be seeing things, but that whole experience that kind of gets at your heart where you're like, I remember that day because of how fun and how hard it was. And so I hope they carry those adventures with them, and it inspires them to do more things that are challenging and uncomfortable. And it just kind of opens up that door to them for appreciation of, getting out there and taking on things that, are challenging.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. Well, 2 things I want to comment on that. The first, you talked about when you're 70 or 80, which I'm staring down rapidly. But I heard somebody say once, nobody has ever said on their deathbed, darn, I wish I spent more time in the office. If only I had spent more time in the office. Nobody ever says that. So I love that you're focused on, really prioritizing this kind of experience. And the second thing I wanted to point out was that what you said about how, sort of big, challenging adventures are, really imprint memories, and they can have a huge transformative impact on us as people, because First, it's something that you're going to remember for a long time. This was hard. I had to, I sweat. I had to prepare. I wasn't sure. I had self-doubt at one point, whether I could do it. And then when you actually do it, you have that incredible reward. I did something hard and something challenging, and I can do other things that are hard and challenging. And look at the views that I had and the memories that I made, and, that we did this together. All of those things, I think, really make that, imprint that on who you are as a person. I think definitely we'll be doing that with your kids. So I think that's awesome. Have you seen changes in them and your kids, talking about your kids, have you seen changes in them just based on the adventures they've already experienced?
Yes, I do think they've become more adaptable and resilient in the outdoors, and they are not afraid of trying something new, or they welcome going to new places, and we dream bigger about what we want to do as a family. And even what you were saying earlier about, for me, adventuring as a family is 10 out of 10 activity. And when we look back and we do our goal planning each year, and we look back and you think, what were the best parts of the year? It's always adventuring as a family. And then it's always seeing the kids something that's challenging for them, but succeed at it. So, and that's taken us even beyond the parks. Like this last summer, we went to Smith Rock State Park in Oregon because our daughter loves climbing, and we really wanted to do rock climbing outdoors. And there's not a ton of opportunities in Washington State. So, and seeing them, they climbed all day it was an 8-hour climb. And the guide was I've never seen anyone climb this much. Like, I'm exhausted. Like, they just So to me, that was a golden day of the entire year, is seeing our kids. They kind of compete with each other, so there's that, but just want to keep going, keep doing. So that's really cool. And then something else I want to mention, as we talk about these big adventures, sometimes what we think is going to leave an impression on our kids is not what does. So maybe we'll go to Yosemite or the Grand Canyon and they're going to think this is amazing. But when I asked my son about Alaska and our 3-week RV road trip, he said his favorite thing was seeing the eagle. And we were staying at this campground in Seward on the Kenai Peninsula. And it's at a KOA, and it's right by this massive eagle's nest that's right above us. And we saw an eagle come and go. The eagle had little baby eagles, and then caught a salmon and brought it up, and the water was ripping right around us. And I really love seeing the eagle. And that was his highlight. And that wasn't in the national parks either. So I think it's also being very mindful that not all the cool experiences that surround a national park trip even occur in the park. It's part of just going that allows these other adventures and experiences that we would have never had to happen, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's serendipity. You just happen to be there. So you're exposing them to the opportunity to see things, that National Geographic moment, with the eagle with the salmon and its jaw and water dripping. I mean, that's amazing. That's really, really cool. How your kids you've got some goals and you've talked them over with your kids, so they know about, we're going to see, these national parks, and we're going to go here or do that. Are there goals that they have, or that they're looking forward to?
Yes. So the first year, 2022, we set out. So our first goal, again, I mentioned, was 18 years. Then we learned of this family, the American field trip, and they visited all the parks in 18 months, which is basically 2 summers and in between. And we're, oh my gosh, could we do that? Could we visit all the parks in 2 years? Now, basically due to money, we're doing 5 years. So our goal is to finish in 2027. But, now I just forgot the question. Well, that first summer, it was 10 weeks on the road. We mainly focused on parks. And it became very clear that the kids want to do water parks, and they want to do amusement parks. They want to do other parks. So after that, we incorporated other types of parks. So we incorporated a water park when we were in the Midwest. Or when we were in Orlando and visiting the Florida parks, we went to Disney World. And so I think those experiences really bring that whole trip to life for the kids as well. And we've been able to do some other fun, or while we're driving on the way somewhere, we stopped in Idaho at this local amusement park, or we'll do a trampoline park. So again, still parks, but in different definitions of the term.
Right. So it's not all about necessarily a national park or an outdoor experience, but just, a fun sort of adventure. And there's a friend of mine who is really big. The other podcast that I co-host, the Almost There Adventure podcast, we interviewed this guy, Scott, and he's all about creating these sort of goals, where it might be one of the odder ones that he did. He and a friend wanted to eat at every windowless Chinese restaurant in Phoenix, which is a very specific goal, kind of weird and crazy, but that's the kind of thing that I think is kind of fun, just to go and see if you can do something like that. And whether you're visiting amusement parks or water parks or trampoline parks or national parks, it's a great way to kind of set a goal for your family or yourself and have some fun along the way. Let's talk a sort of a little practical thing. I know when my kids were young, we didn't really have an issue with, screen time. My kids didn't get their first cell phone until they were 17 or 18. So, we dodged a lot of that. And that was really just a function of the time. It wasn't the norm back then, but it's different now. And I see that with my grandkids, they all have, phones, and they're kids still, and I think that's kind of weird. But how do you handle that screen time versus time outdoors and trail time? Is that a struggle? Is that something that, just what do you do as parents to help bring balance to that?
I think it's a great question, and it's something that a lot of parents and society is kind of looking at right now. What we decided on our first trip, when we had the 10, 11 weeks where we were traveling around the country, we got each of them tablets, and our neighbor chipped in. So we had these tablets that they could use when we were on the road. And then as soon as we stopped the car, the tablets stayed in the car. And so then when we were outdoors, we didn't have any electronic device. So that time in the park was just disconnected from it. And I remember thinking how, oh, thank goodness, because I remember road trips when I was a kid and how bored you were and trying to do these different games. And there's times where they'd be on their tablets and other times where we're having those conversations in the car. But it made the drives a whole lot different experience, watching different movies and playing games. And I was really into, because I do teaching, I downloaded a bunch of educational apps on their phone. So that was a good use. I felt like better use of that time. And then the last couple years, especially the Alaska one, where so much of the experience of the park was in a bus or in a shuttle, we had to adjust a little bit of the screen time experience. Kristin, share more.
Yeah, no, I think you shared most of it. I think it's more also the long drives they would actually look forward to them, to be honest, because they could be on their tablets. So when we have to drive 3 hours to the next park, Hudson would ask, is it a long drive? Working in our favor. And again, that first year it was only educational apps. Now they've got their own. My daughter's painting someone's nails in the who knows what's going on. So but yes, now it's only screen time in the car on the way to somewhere, and that has worked for the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. So I would imagine, because you mentioned educational apps, there's probably some ways that you've implemented sort of an augmented technology to the trip that you have at hand, identifying a bird or a plant, or maybe logging, creating a photo journal of a trip or an experience, or what are some ways or tips or advice that you have for families who want to, augment the experience with technology?
Yeah, well, I'll just call out the Junior Ranger program. It's available at every single national park site that I'm aware of. And it's intended for kids, but it's available to anyone. I've seen a lot of adults get a Junior Ranger badge. You can get a sticker. Sometimes there's specific Junior Ranger if you're an oceanographer or you're studying glaciers at one of the parks in Alaska. So that is a great way because it's actually an activity book. So you're not on a screen. So for us, I would say it's less about, yes, we've intentionally downloaded some apps, but we actually, if we can choose, we would choose to not have them on a screen or even some of the augmented activities. So junior ranger activity is great. We have the book and we go through it with the kids, and we try and do games or scavenger hunts when we're hiking in the park. Because again, it's a long hike. Maybe they're not as excited about it, but if we make it, hey, every mile you get fruit snacks, or let's look who sees the first animal gets 1,000 points, and then balloons into 100,000 if you see a bear, or, just random stuff. And that actually keeps the fun, the adventure part versus we're doing a hike. We're going from point A to point B. It's really how to make it fun and how are they motivated? Our son is very externally motivated by candy. He literally walked the whole Manitou incline at 5 because he could go to the store and get whatever candy he wanted. So again, our daughter is very intrinsically motivated. She's not going to do it. She's just going to get carried by Rob or, so they each have their own personality. So it's finding what works for each kid. But when clearly a sweet treat can work, or just making it a game. I think those are our two most successful strategies.
And another educational thing we do on the drives to the park is pulling up podcasts. So Kristin found you'll do 1 or 2 different podcasts. So we'll have that going on in the car. Kristin and me might be talking about or listening to it, and the kids will pipe in every once in a while.
Yeah, they're listening. They're not listening intently, but you can tell Kalea will say, "Oh, what did they say?" And we're like, "Okay," it gives us a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, they're picking up pieces of it. Yeah.
Yeah, bits and pieces.
Okay. So what do you hope that your kids take away? So, they're at some point they will fly the nest and go out on their own. What do you hope that they'll take away from this sort of lifelong experience of, traveling, adventure, or visiting parks,
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can give them a vault of memories that they can think back on and remember and have as part of their childhood. That this is what my parents, kind of showing them the world, but through national parks. And then I hope it's part of their identity. I think if you lean too much into, you're going to do what we want to do. And I don't want, some kids resent their parents for taking them camping all the time. We absolutely don't want that. But we hope that they look back and think that the outdoors and adventure is part of who they are. So for example, our daughter loves climbing. And so a family friend called her the climbing queen. And so I heard her say to a friend, "I'm the climbing queen, and our family is the wild parks family, and we visit parks." And to me, that is what we do. And the parks, again, the parks term was intentional. It's not just national parks. We love parks. We live right by the Dream Park in our town. We go there almost every day. We love water parks. We love amusement parks. We love, all these types of parks. And so I think it's a lot more expansive also than just national parks. So that was
right. Yeah.
And when I think, those, I think early on in my life, I was taught to take these snapshots because you're going through your life and all of a sudden you don't stop and pause and just take an image of this is what we're doing. This is where I'm at right now. This is who I'm with. And so I want my kids to have those mental images, but also these stories that we tell over and over. And I'll share a couple of those to kind of show to lock it in. When we were down in, during spring break, we do some of our trips. We were down in Bend Park, and as we went down there, we happened to go to one of the hot springs. And so our kids love hot springs. You're sitting in there, and then there was a river right next to it. And so they started swimming across the river. We kind of got them. We were swimming to Mexico. And so we would go across and touch in Mexico and then swim back. And so for an hour, we're swimming to Mexico, and we're swimming to Mexico. And then you're back in the hot spring. And then the next day we got to go across to Mexico, and you got on these burros. And so they're like, "Yeah, we got to ride on the donkeys and go to the town of Mexico." So there's this whole story that we've told probably a dozen times about swimming to Mexico and then riding the donkey into Mexico, and then the hot springs and just being there in the hot water and then the cold. And so that feeling of nature, and then taking a risk and going to a different country and coming back. But whenever we talk about the parks, that tends to come up. And there's one more I want to share. When we were in Theodore Roosevelt National Park, we just happened to be going through, and then there was these, what are they, the buffalo? the bison. And so we saw the bison on the road, and then we're driving around. We see some, see the wild horses, the wild turkeys. And then we went up for this short little hike, and there's this massive buffalo or bison. And so we hike up right at sunset, and it looked something in the African safari where it's just this beautiful sunset, and it was warm, and we're running around, and the kids are, their heart rates are racing. And then I think it was when they're in their mating season, so the bison were just loud, very loud, just looking for one another. And so we're up there and having that time watching the sunset go down, and it was just something we talk about that time in Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and the things that we see, the wild horses, the wild turkey, and just this magical evening. And so, yeah.
And I think a cool part of that, so I know you mentioned Africans, right? To me, it's we're going back in time to when Native Americans were roaming the plains hundreds of years ago with the buffalo, bison. And it was a snapshot in my mind of this is literally probably what it's been this for hundreds of years because it's a national park and it's been preserved. When we go to Crater Lake, I think what makes Crater Lake different than Lake Tahoe? Because it was one of the first national parks and it's preserved and it's available for everyone. You don't have to have a lot of money in the lake house. And so I think that is one of the benefits of visiting the parks is you get to see a glimpse in time of a very wild place that could look the same now as it did hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of years ago. In Sequoia, you think about how old those trees are. So it's really cool to have a taste of that in amidst our urban busyness, screen time. And I think the more we can get out into the parks, the more we can appreciate nature and what it has to show us, even about the past,
Yeah. It kind of connects you to history. It connects you to the earth and nature, and it makes it very real and personal. That's very true. So talk a little bit about what you've learned as, traveling and adventuring as a family. What are some of the things that you've taken away from this experience so far? And I know you're not done, so there's more to come.
I think one of my favorite things that we do, and sometimes the kids are into it, sometimes not. We do these highs and lows for the days, or roses and thorns, and just asking them what sticks out for you. What did you remember from the day, and what was something we wouldn't want to repeat if we do it again? And Kristin was saying, sometimes what the kids say are so different than what we would think. The eagle story, or for me, I remember in Kennecott, seeing the old copper mine just stuck with me because this whole community that rose up for a decade around this copper mine and became, this just closed community. And all of a sudden, as soon as the copper ran out, it just shut down and they loaded everything up. And that for me as a business teacher and entrepreneurship teacher, realizing the value of industry in these communities, and once those industries aren't there, how much it affects things. So that really stuck with me, where it probably wouldn't stick with other people in our family.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so let's switch gears and talk a little bit about, forward thinking. So I'm sure there's other people who looked at what you've done and been inspired by what you've done as a family. What advice do you have for families who want to explore more, but they're not really sure where to start? You've thought of maybe going and tackling all the national parks, or, just too daunting. How do you start setting those kind of goals and building an adventurous life as a family?
Yeah, I think it's starting with where your heart feels pulled, right? If your family loves the desert, or if you just want to visit the national park closest to you, you can always start there. And then, almost there's a minimal viable product, but you could say a minimum viable adventure. What is one thing we can do right now? Or if we plan, we could do it next month. We live in Washington. We live literally 3 minutes from the visitor center to Olympic National Park. So we go there all the time. But going to Mount Rainier, you could literally make it a day trip. We could do an overnight, and we could either camp, or we could go to whatever. But I think it's just finding what can you do to start and get out there and have some adventures. And then maybe you dream about the next thing, next summer or spring break. Let's go to the Grand Canyon. And also asking kids what they want to do, right? So there's things we each have our own, I love hot weather, Rob cold weather, the kids amusement, water parks, and being outdoors. So it's what do we all want to do, and giving everyone a state in choosing what you do as a family. So even in the weekend, I'll say, let everyone pick one thing they really want to do this weekend. And then we make sure that sometimes I'll say trampoline park, which is like an hour and a half from us. So we're not going to do that every weekend, but we can go to the ice cream shop, or we can go to, play at this recreation area with our friends. So I think it's just starting local with some micro adventures that feel doable for your family, and then building on those. And I think each thing leads to the next thing.
And one thing, and you might experience this or agree with this or not. I find that vision casting and having a vision for what you want to do is really important. And then designing your life to make it happen. So especially a 6-pack of peaks, or visiting all the national parks, or those big adventures, they don't just happen. You have to plan for them. So a lot of it is when you first start talking about it, and then you cast a vision for, this is something we want to do. Is it going to be 18 years? Is it going to be 2 years? And you start to plan for it. And then for us, for this one of the bigger hurdles, as Kristin mentioned, was finances and time. And so you start designing your life so that you can make it happen. So as we're looking at Alaska and American Samoa, figuring out which airlines to go on, or for me, because I'm a teacher, this summer I was able to get an additional teaching contract. So I'm planning on working a huge chunk of the summer, which will allow us to do those Alaska parks. One of the things we started doing is when we're gone, we rent out our house. So that funds a lot of the travel. And so just getting really creative on, okay, this is what we want to do. Now, how do we need to design our lives to make this happen? And who do we be a part of that? What resources do we need? And then you just start telling people about it, and then pulling those resources in. And one of the things that's so powerful for me is watching who aligns with you and who comes in to support and to make it happen, especially in the ultra sports. There's so much of what I do relies on crew and support. And so for me, everyone's like, how do you find your crew, and how do you find the people that come with you on these trips? And I was just share what I'm doing, and I tell everybody, and the people that come in and want to help, like that's who joins me. And on the Wild Parks family, it's, who's come on the trips with us? And we've had friends meet us at certain parks. We've had the grandmas come along. So having that bond with our close friends and with our family, it's really been impactful.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said, Rob, about, having the sort of vision, and that's important, because I think a lot of people have dreams of doing things. They have dreams of, I'd love to go, explore some of the national parks, or I'd love to travel across the world. But just dreaming about that, watching a YouTube video or seeing something, and that doesn't take you closer to that goal. It doesn't make it real. And I think, but that is a step. And I think the key, as you said, is sort of taking that and then turning it into actionable steps that will help you get to that place. So, renting your place out when you're traveling during the summer, or taking that extra job to earn the money to be able to afford the plane that's going to get you to those last few national parks in Alaska. Those are all things that are very actionable steps that help you achieve that vision. I love that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the future again. So let's say that your kids 20 years from now are on this podcast, or something like this, whatever that is in 20 years, who knows? What do you hope that they remember? What is the story that you hope that they'll be able to share 20 years from now?
Yeah, I think for me, especially one of my other roles is as I run a creative studio we were working on down in Los Angeles area when we had our time there. So I love the idea of telling stories on these long story arcs. And so with my son Hudson, we've started doing these little adventures. One of them, we were down in the Copper Canyons, and so they call them Tornado Blanco, the white tornado. And so I see that kind of story arc of him, and not wanting to put my own stamp on it, but just seeing him excited about sports and the outdoors and endurance, and just seeing that arc of how this time in the outdoors has become a part of his story, whether that's our time on the Camino in Spain, or the Wild Parks family, or moving into our next adventure after this, that's just a part of his ethos, and that he'll take that with him. I mean, I think him and Calais are so much more likely to be exchange students in high school, or take a gap year, or when they get to these certain phases of their life that they incorporate what they've learned and kind of embedded into them as a part of that next phase of their journey. So, just kind of recognizing the value of connecting with people and family and outdoors and that time outside. I think the little things that we do, as well as these big adventures, just kind of get into their personalities and become a part of who they are.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing that already. So Hudson in his classroom, he's in third grade. There was a 2026. What are your goals for the year? So on 3 of the things on his goals were visit Australia, go skydiving. Listen, I don't even remember. Wow, you're 9. Legally cannot go skydiving, but it's cool. So you can already see the wheels turning, right? And he wants to visit the biggest. He wants to go on the biggest roller coaster in the world, or visit the biggest whatever.
Stay in the biggest
frying pan or whatever. So I think for me, it's choosing things that obviously light them up. So national parks has really become, even when we started dating, that was something that was important to us. So it doesn't even have to be national parks. It's really just find something in the outdoors and adventure and not being afraid to take risks. And also just to make their own dreams come true. Hey, he wants to go skydiving. We're here to help him do that. Maybe we're not paying for it when he's 18, but I can show him when he can go skydiving. I can show him where he can go skydiving. That in when he's 15, he can go in Colorado because you can be younger and do it there. So maybe we can do it when he's 15. So again, it's showing them that there is a path to make things happen that they want to make happen, and that there's always a way. And with these national parks, sometimes it's, okay, how are we going to fund this? How are we going to do that? There's always a way. You can have a plan A, B, C, and they can make these things happen with a little bit of creativity.
Right.
And
right.
a little high. Maybe it's not meant to happen this year, but it can happen for sure.
Right.
And one thing with that, we talk about the resilience, that also showing how messy it is at times. One of the other things that comes up a lot, there was this one experience, and I forget location, but we were up at 11,000 feet. Kristin can tell it.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we were on the way to Bryce National Park, and we stopped in Cedar Breaks National Monument, which is called Mini Bryce. And it was literally on the way. So let's just stop there. And you can drive all the way up to the top of Bryan Head Peak, which is literally 11,000 feet. You literally, and right as we're cusping on the top, we blew both tires. We have a flat, but we blew 2 tires. So thankful there was service, and we could, I'm calling any tire mechanic towing place, and I convinced someone to, can I come tomorrow? I'm like, no, absolutely not. We need someone. Can you please come today? But the thing is, we had the roof tent. So we just popped it up. We played Uno. We cooked hot dogs, and the tow truck came a few, hours later, and we got down the same day, and it was fine. Because there is a way to get out of this. But at the time, what are the chances that both tires blew on it's a rocky gravel road, and we're at the top of an 11,000 foot peak. So that was probably the biggest unique situational challenge that we encountered. But at the same time, we made the best of it. And I think when things come up, or the weather is not great, or there's road delays, I think that it is a good learning experience in patience and waiting when you're with your kids, and you can teach them those lessons in real time, experientially.
Yeah, for sure. And it also helps you realize that, problems can be solved, and you learn it. I'm a planner. I don't know about you guys. Sounds you're planners to some degree as well. And I have to plan things, and I'll sometimes get bogged down by the details because I'm, trying to plan for every eventuality and all the things that can happen. But then, you have a situation where you get 2 flats at the same time. It's not really something that you are going to bring 2 spares along, or whatever. And then you have to figure it out. And that's what I think that's one of the great skills that you'll be passing on to your kids, is the ability to say, hey, sometimes life will throw a monkey wrench into your plans, but you'll figure it out. It's not okay, though. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, this has really been a fun conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to both of you guys about what your adventures, your sort of your vision for the family and for some of the adventures that you have. It's really exciting to follow along. Let's maybe just share briefly how people can connect with you if they want to if they were inspired by your story and want to connect with you, where can they follow you or find you online?
Yeah. So we have a website, wildparksfamily.com. We haven't posted a ton there, but we certainly do exist and there it's on the web. And then we have an Instagram page, Wild Parks Family, and a Facebook page. So we post whenever we're kind of going to a national park or have something to share. But you can always just message too. So if you want to do this and visit all the parks, or if you have questions because you're visiting the Big Five in Utah or 3 parks in Florida, we love sharing about our experience. And we've been helped by so many people that have shared their insights on how they've planned trips or things they've included that you wouldn't naturally think to include when you're visiting. So have learned a lot, and we're happy to share that with anyone else who's on their own journey to visit the parks or do other national park adventures.
Awesome. Well, Rob and Kristin, thank you so much for, taking some time out of your busy schedules to join me on the show. We're really looking forward to following along and seeing how the future turns out for, all of your adventures, and following along with your stuff in Alaska. Hopefully your son gets a chance to skydive at some point and visit Australia and all of the big goals that you guys have. And the climbing queen, see where she goes with that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So my hat's off to both of you, and we'll see you online and outside.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Rob and Kristin, thank you so much. When you two started talking about vision casting, your family adventure goals before your kids were even born, that really stuck with me. This idea that adventure isn't just something that happens to you, it's something you design your life around. If you want to follow along with the Wild Parks family, find them at wildparksfamily.com and on Instagram and Facebook at Wild Parks Family. And if this episode inspired you, whether it's the national parks, the 6-pack of peaks, or just getting outside more with the people you love, head to socialhiker.net. Join the community. Take a challenge. There are thousands of people out there building their own adventure story, and we'd love for yours to be part of it. Until next time, see you online and see you outside.